All right, we got 25 minutes. That's more than we hoped for. Hello, everybody. Good morning, Bangkok, sub0. Hope you guys are ready for a little bit of a different talk today. Together with me is Nikola, our lead blockchain engineer at OriginTrail. I'm Branimir. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO. And if you've seen us previously on previous sub-zeros, you probably heard a bunch of OriginTrail, what the decentralized knowledge graph is. So this time we won't go deep into that. We'll actually show you something of a future vision for what essentially we're all building here. And we'll be talking about why knowledge is a new asset class and how we can do something called knowledge mining on Polkadot. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to basically introduce the topic, and yeah, we're super happy to chat later on the technical details of it. There's a lot of ground to cover, so we're here around, and feel free to reach us over a beer maybe later or just outside. All right, so we actually want to talk a little bit about a higher level problem here, and those are essentially the anomalies that we see. I'm sure all of you are all familiar with what's going on with the world in terms of AI, especially the last couple of years or a year and a half. And it's shown quite a bit of anomalies. And these anomalies actually have quite a bit of a potential to cause harm. There's a lot of potential for threat for the internet as we know it, because I'm sure if you're here, you're probably kind of an innovator yourself, and I'm sure the way you think about AI is that probably you're thinking that this will be kind of at some point in the near future, almost a default paradigm for human-computer or computer-computer interactions, really. And a couple of anomalies here, like this one, I'm sure everybody knows about. AIs or LLMs hallucinate, and actually all they do is hallucinate. That's a feature, it's not a bug, but they hallucinate really well. They're really good guessers of the next token or next word. And that can be useful, so they can hallucinate well, or they can hallucinate totally off and go crazy. So that's, but it would be fair to say that this is a problem. Then another big problem, obviously, if you're here, I'm sure you know that centralization in the world has created this real bad situation when it comes to data ownership and intellectual property. So especially LLMs, they got trained on everybody's data, your data, my data. So is this really fair? And is this the internet we want to see in the future? I'm pretty sure most of you won't agree that it is. Obviously, centralization. I won't preach to the choir. Nobody likes that, right? And then we have bias, which I'm sure also you've seen lately all over the place. Biases of all kinds. And, well, who causes this bias? Well, whoever owns the AI or the LLM or whatever the next new thing is. So it's obviously a big problem. And if we get used to interacting with this thing on a daily basis, and it contains all of these biases, well, that's not really great, right? So that's another anomaly. And then finally, I'm not sure if you heard about this one, model collapse, but if you haven't, I'll try to explain it in a couple of sentences. Essentially, it turns out you can train these LLMs in like all of the internet's data, scrape all of the internet, everybody's data, steal it all, whatever. What happens is LLMs start producing data, or so-called synthetic data, right? And actually, they produce it at such a low cost that it's growing so fast that very soon, we don't know when, and we probably won't be aware exactly when, but there will be a moment in time where all of the human-generated data or pre-LLM data gets surpassed by data created by LLMs or synthetic data. And when that happens, models are going to essentially start to collapse. What does this mean? Well, there's a lot of research showing that when you train LLMs on LLM outputs, they start to deteriorate. So they hallucinate more, they go wacko, like they're on drugs or something. So long story short is this problem, it's coming, like it's definitely coming. And when it comes, there's a chance that actually AI from this huge steep growth might actually start going downward and actually exacerbate all of the problems that we see here. So those are just some of the anomalies that we see are a big threat to the internet. And what we want to actually talk to you about today is this notion of a verifiable internet. So we actually recently published, this is a pre-publication of a white paper for what we believe a verifiable internet for artificial intelligence should look like. And if you scan this code, it will take you to this PDF, and essentially talks about this convergence of literally Web3, crypto, internet, and AI. We'll talk about this today, though we cannot go as deep as the paper does, so I encourage everybody to jump in if this topic sounds interesting. But to give you kind of a high-level overview, what it talks about is really this notion of how we can tackle those anomalies. And we've actually been inspired by one of the key leading figures in the world of AI, Jan LeCun. He's a Turing Award winner, who said that essentially, said this, the quote, that if you want to build proper AI, you will have to crowdsource it. You will have to crowdsource all of the knowledge to create a repository or all human knowledge. And all humans will need to contribute to it. And in that sense, we actually went ahead and we sort of thought about this idea on how we can reach this together. So some of the key properties that Nikola will introduce of this verifiable internet for AI.
So yeah, let's jump into them. So we know what are the problems, and now we need to agree, like what is the vision, what are the core characteristics that we need to have to be part of the verifiable internet to tackle those issues. And of course, as we said, hallucination is the main problem. There should be no hallucinations in a verifiable internet. Then, data ownership should be able to check, and information provenance is something that needs to be part. And one thing also that's interesting is the embedded incentives. So the system needs to be created from the LM side and from the user side to bootstrap creation of the verifiable knowledge and also truth. Then also those knowledge can come from multiple data sources and contributors, which is in a way connected with information provenance. So we need to see who are the owners, and we need to always be able to check the sources of that's used for training the LLM or building any other AI services on top of it. And at the end, we need to provide the privacy to the users when it's required. So yeah, these are some of the main characteristics that we should easily agree on that will be like important for a verifiable internet for AI. And on the highest level, how we envision and how we all together should look into verifiable internet is it should operate on verifiable inputs and services, always be able to check, all should be open source, should be shared. Data should be organized in a decentralized knowledge graph. So knowledge graphs are format which is best suitable for training and using in AI systems, and having it decentralized gave us the main foundation for creation. And then all the Web3 infrastructure that we have been built throughout the years, it should be pluggable. It should be easily for any of the projects built as part of the Polkadot ecosystem or any other to enter the verifiable internet and to be used for any of the applications there. Where the trust comes from, well, as we all used to it, is from the rooted in the blockchains, and then tokens incentives will provide the positive alignment, will create incentivization, will lead people into just defeating the model collapse and make the AI grow in an expected way and more verifiable.
Perhaps we can ask a question here. Who here has heard of the term RAG, retrieval augmented generation? I see one hand. Okay. So the paper talks a little bit more about this, but essentially it talks about this idea of not asking LLMs for direct answers so they hallucinate it out, and vision something, but rather that you do this retrieval augmented generation. You first retrieve some knowledge, for example, knowledge you created, or data from a chain, or from some verifiable source, somewhere where you can establish information provenance, and then you feed it to an LLM to just essentially kind of format it nicely to you. And this is what this retrieval augmented generation framework is about. What we introduce is in here as the idea with the decentralized knowledge graph is this decentralized retrieval augmented generation. Like I said, it's explained much more thoroughly in the document, but essentially it enables querying a knowledge graph, a decentralized knowledge graph that everybody can populate together, and essentially finding the right knowledge, extracting it rather than generating it. essentially meaning that the LLM is really a facilitator or any type of similar AI system or an agent, rather than it being, the knowledge source. And with this, we get to essentially enable these properties. So you can create your knowledge, and then you can be the source, or your project, or whoever, your institution, your university, whatever type of entity that is able to issue some certain knowledge. And we'll show you a small example at the end. Anyway, sorry, Nikola, continue.
Okay. And yeah, now we came to the introduction of the neural web network, or neural web parachain in the Polkadot ecosystem. And it is the decentralized AI on blockchain, which drives three main things. So it is designed to incentivize knowledge creation, crowdsourced and organized knowledge creation, which should be connected and shared through the process of knowledge mining or knowledge creation. And what is the main thing that needs to be? It needs to be governed by the community, and it is already 100% community bootstrapped parachain that exists on the network. So we have the basis that's needed here, and we are building on top of it.
Perhaps you know about this chain under its former name, OriginTrail parachain. It's established for about 2 years now already, so it's pretty mature, and Polkadot adopted quite a bit actually. There's a lot of companies using it, and it went through a kind of transition to this neural web network in the last couple of months, also essentially enabling additional capability, but effectively being a chain that is designed exactly for this, to incentivize this verifiable internet and according to the principles that we've shown previously. So once again, for 100% community bootstrap and governed, so governance implemented. Its native token Neuro has been emitted to the community when the parachain was started, and essentially it's in full control of the community is in full control of the project, which also brings us to the next slide, which is.
So short on the Neuro tokenization. So as we have Bitcoin incentivizing the proof of work knowledge mining, Neuro is the parallel which incentivizes the trusted knowledge mining and intelligence. So it will drive the future AI services and future knowledge bases for the AI service. And how we can get that? It is by emissioning token for the knowledge mining process, and it will be governed by the community, by the on-chain governance that's implemented on the parachain. So we should crowdsource the knowledge for the future AI altogether.
Yeah, essentially here you can also see the distribution. It is intended to essentially go throughout the years and establish quite a bit of a percentage for knowledge mining. But pretty much everything else is either community treasury, development treasury. There's obviously collators running on chain. And this bottom part, the auction rewards, actually has been designated to basically emit every time the chain needs to extend its lease or purchase core time now in the future, when it's no longer going to be the same system. But essentially the community has a pool of these tokens to use for the longevity of the chain. So it's not necessary that there's single actor like us as the team or some VC or whoever to purchase future core time. Rather, the community can do it itself. All right, and essentially, so how would these incentives be emitted? Well, if you had a chance to run into the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph before, you probably heard of this notion of knowledge assets. Well, these knowledge paranets are essentially collections of knowledge assets. Knowledge assets are technically your knowledge NFTs. So instead of having an NFT with some picture of a monkey or whatever, you would rather have an NFT associated with a piece of knowledge. I will show you one of those in a bit. Essentially, knowledge paranets, and you can probably figure out where the inspiration for that name comes from. We're big fans of Polkadot, by the way, and the tech behind it. So the paranet is essentially kind of akin to a parachain, which is part of the wider network. But essentially, these paranets are collections of knowledge assets and collections of services, Web3 services, on-chain or off-chain services even, that together form kind of one system. And these paranets together join into the decentralized knowledge graph as a whole. So you can query, for example, one parent. You can go inside and ask something to the parent, or you can ask multiple paranets at the same time. And the point of a paranet is, because knowledge is kind of a very abstract topic, one of the ideas behind paranets is to organize them in some form of topical way. So there's like a knowledge category that the paranet is focused on. So if you were to, let's say, build a paranet, which you could because it's completely permissionless technology, you will be able to choose your own blockchain, choose the services you want to run on that paranet as a paranet operator, a set of ontologies being these essentially schemas for the knowledge graph. So, but they're a little bit more than schemas actually. They're this notion of the symbolic AI actually. So knowledge graphs are this older branch of AI. It's been used for many years now actually. They're under the hood everywhere. Even though you might not know about it, but every time you do a Google search, or Netflix recommends you a show, or Amazon recommends you something to buy, actually all of these recommendations have been coming from knowledge graphs before. And what they leverage is, well, your previous purchases of people that did similar purchases to you, and essentially they do all of these knowledge graph queries. So the point here being is that because this querying system is very, very powerful, that you can, once you apply this ontology, that you can actually do that to map different sources of information, be that blockchains, be that oracles, perhaps some centralized sources, if that works for you. In any case, if you were to build a paranet, you can pick chains, services, set of ontologies, but also you can pick your incentivization rules. So you could say, this is how I value knowledge. This is important to me. This type of information versus that. Or these would be the quality checks that I would apply in order to determine if something is of higher quality or lower quality. Quality being, again, something that you're looking for, depending on what type of system you're looking to build. So essentially, enabling full freedom, in a way, to build based on this fundamental technology. And once you have this, you can either build a paranet without any incentives, but why would you do that? Why wouldn't you ask for incentives? So you can submit a governance proposal on NeuroWeb and basically ask for, from the NeuroWeb community, for a certain amount of neuro emissions to reward contributors to your knowledge, so basically to your knowledge paranet. So the idea is that not only you contribute knowledge to the paranet, but your community, or just kind of wider open community, not just the community of OriginTrail, but maybe community of a project, or the entire Polkadot community, or even wider, and that everybody is able to contribute knowledge, pass through your set of checks, and finally get essentially rewards for it. So do knowledge mining in that sense. This picture essentially illustrates these two concepts. So that essentially you have paranets that contain a set of knowledge and a set of knowledge services in the broadest sense. And then knowledge miners being the ones that contribute knowledge and actually end up owning it. And service provider providing the services. So it can be, for example, you as a paranet owner. So the NeuroWeb actually emitting incentives towards those paranets. And one example of a paranet, if this sounded a little bit too abstract, is actually something we've been working on lately in the last couple of months. Maybe you've even seen it online. It's called Polkadot. So Polkadot AI is one example of a service that operates on a paranet, which is essentially a trusted AI-powered education tool. And what it contains is a bunch of knowledge about the Polkadot ecosystem. So general Polkadot knowledge, docs, but also knowledge about different projects. So Moonbeam knowledge, Astar knowledge, you name it. We also included a bunch of media and tutorials as another example of knowledge, which is in a bit different format, community-generated content. And the services on it, there are several of them. One of them is this DRAG service, basically an API that goes inside of these knowledge assets and tries to find the answer to a question you're asking. And another service is a Twitter bot. So like I did, and I went ahead and asked this Twitter bot with just a simple /ask, what is core time, I think. Well, what is Polkadot core time? Actually, it responded to me in a tweet. And it responded and said, okay, this is the core time, and there's a full answer because I cannot fit the whole thing in a tweet. Essentially enabling anybody on Twitter, on X, to see this. The ambition is to now, of course, do this for other platforms such as Discord, Telegram, places where people are at, right? Not just a UI somewhere in the corner of the world of the internet, but rather where people hang out. And these are just some basic services that you can implement that fundamentally query this knowledge, but anybody really can contribute to this knowledge base. And I can actually show you briefly what was the minimum position. So short demo, I guess it's here. Yeah, so this is how Polkadot looks like. This is obviously a beta, and looks like a chatbot, another service, like quite of the most common services. And I can ask it, for example, what did I ask? Explain the concept of core time, for example. What happens now, and it's going to take a moment, it's actually it retrieves knowledge assets from the decentralized knowledge graph, and then it generates this answer. So it actually does this retrieval augmented generation. And it gives you the answer that says core time is Polkadot ecosystem. I guess you guys know what core time is, so I shouldn't explain it anymore. But essentially, what is the kind of the key value proposition here is not LLM generating something, rather the LLM created a knowledge graph query. And this knowledge graph query actually, it knows how to write really well. So think of it as kind of a SQL query, but it's not SQL under the hood, it's not a relational database, it's something called Sparkle, which is it's pretty much SQL for graphs. And I can actually open these knowledge assets. So what is happening right now is we're actually loading this knowledge asset, and because it's a little bigger, it's going to take a moment to load, from the decentralized knowledge graph. And you actually get to see this graph of information that I talked about, which is full of the content about Polkadot core time, including links, including all kinds of grant entities, and basically creating this graph from the source, which is Polkadot review updates you need to know, so an article. And in this case, the issuer, well, it was us. But if it were, let's say, I don't know, Moonbeam creating their knowledge asset, this would obviously be Moonbeam with a verifiable identity on Polkadot using the identity system. Just a little bit more about these knowledge assets. So like I said, these are essentially knowledge NFTs. So this knowledge sits in the decentralized knowledge graph. This is queryable very easily by AI, and actually it's cheaper. A knowledge graph query is about 1,000 times or more cheaper than a classic LLM query. Is because it's just classic information retrieval problem. It's not a generation problem. And it has an associated NFT. So in this case, if I open this link, I'm going to go to the NeuroWeb subscan, where I'm going to see this NFT, which for some reason, I guess, my internet is breaking or something. But you're going to see it was created 28 days ago. It was minted, essentially. And we, as the initial knowledge generators, own it. You can also see the entire history. So if somebody updates this knowledge asset, this will show up here, essentially establishing information provenance, and you can dive deeper into the content of the graph or query it yourself. Anybody can, by the way, run a node of the decentralized knowledge graph, sync it, and then query it. So it's not like a central technology, rather it's completely decentralized. And then you can just go ahead and ask a bunch of questions. These are just some examples. And this is, like I said, the initial beta. So we started with this. We're looking to expand, and we're actually going to launch a community proposal to get support from the Polkadot community to fill it up with some really amazing knowledge assets and knowledge services from the Polkadot ecosystem. So if you're interested, come talk to us afterwards. And I promise we're finishing in a moment. So this has been a very, very light intro into what the verifiable internet we believe should be. How can you contribute? You can be one of the people to start the Paranet, and propose an idea to the community, get incentives, or you can just add your services or knowledge assets to existing Paranets. You can contribute to NeuroWeb as any other parachain. You can run collators, stake, participate, and many other ways. We would really love to talk to you if you're building in the Polkadot ecosystem to see how we can collaborate, how your project can be part of this story. So feel free to reach us out and also to join Discord and continue the discussion there. And I'd like to finish with saying that also we have another Turing Award winner who is part of the ecosystem, Dr. Bob Metcalf, inventor of Ethernet and the pioneer of Internet, who actually said this. I guess you can read, so I won't need to read it. You can join us, and hopefully we'll get to build something interesting together. Thanks, everybody.
All right. I think we have time for a few questions. Anyone here have a question for the guys? We have about 5 minutes. If you guys want to ask something. All right. Okay, here in the back. The hot mic is right there.
Hi. Can you hear me?
You're good, man.
So quick question on knowledge mining. So how do you prevent, so I guess two-part question, how do you prevent bad actors from basically farming, knowledge farming, by, let's say I put a ChatGPT under a while loop and just keep generating content? That's one. And two, if that's possible, how do you prevent, how do you improve signal to noise ratio? Let's say for that chatbot, you're looking for some information, but 90% of the knowledge graph is junk. How do you prevent that junk from not showing up in the search query?
It's a really good question. The answer is a bit longer, but I won't consume all of the time, I promise. I'll try to just give it.
You have time.
Okay, a few hints. So the concept of knowledge mining is obviously deeper than what we explained here. One of the things that it tries to leverage is this notion of knowledge signal. So signaling being the ability of, again, crowdsourced curation. So imagine you as the community having a bunch of knowledge, including junk knowledge, because garbage can go in, absolutely, and having the ability to essentially label it as so. So the community would be able to do this in a couple of ways. Similar to, for example, Google. Google, when they won the search engine race, they won it basically because of one important innovation, that was the PageRank algorithm. That algorithm exploited the links between websites, essentially to rank them better by relevance. So at the same token, we can leverage the same principles here. So the more something is linked together, the more links we have in that graph, the more relevant that content should be, and therefore squeezing out the irrelevant or junk to the bottom. But that's just one example, and that is also, that's a kind of an important point to make, is that there's no one size fits all solution. That's why each paranet gets to iterate and design their own way of protecting itself. That can be like, thumbs up, thumbs down, as simple as that by the community, and saying like, this is junk and this is not junk. Or it can be even more creative things, like I said, linking together, providing additional knowledge, and essentially enriching the knowledge graph together. Now, when it comes to spam, essentially, that was the first question. Obviously, it's not free to introduce some information to the knowledge graph. So it's not like you put something in and you just get incentives and you're essentially just like richer. Well, rather, you have to use the native token of the decentralized knowledge graph, the track token. So in a way, that's one part of the protection. But still, if you have a lot of tokens, you can still put a lot of junk in. So essentially, what you need to establish is a way for the right information to come out. Now, it would be really wrong if we, as the developers, would say how that should work, because that brings us back to that first set of problems. That would inherently introduce bias. And I'm not going to mention who, but you've probably seen a lot of those biased AI things lately on the web. Essentially meaning that what we believe is we as a community need to find ways to tackle this. And it needs quite a bit of experimentation. So it's not a solved problem. It's something for us together to solve.
Awesome. All right, let's give it up to Branimir and Nikola. Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.